those
Right.
that I want to cover first out of this book. But I've got to wait for the session. I've got huh? Absolutely. But the key for you guys is to make sure that your conference.
Are you at the mic here?
Yes, so that's the key. So, and I'm talking to Dwayne, and I'm talking to right, and I'm talking to Robert. So those two primarily. All right.
Too much fun.
I think let's split the book. Let's get
I want, dear Lord, a heart that's pure and clean, a sunlit heart with not a cloud between, a heart like thine, a heart divine, a heart that's white as snow. On me, dear Lord, a heart like this bestow. Boy, y'all didn't know that one, did you? Let's try it again. It's a little lower, maybe. I want, dear Lord, a heart that's pure and clean, a sunlit heart with not a cloud between, a heart like thine, a heart divine, a heart that's white as snow. On me, dear Lord, a heart like this bestow. Well, we need one of our prayer conveners to come and pray for us. Thank you.
Of course. If we could all bow our heads together. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this chance to reconvene after a good meal, and for this chance to be together and talk together, to try to find a higher form of you in each other. Please be with us as we continue this meeting, and just be in our voices, be in our hearts, and be in our ears. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. We're going to shift gears very significantly here, and we are going to enter into a discussion that is very highly sensitive. Several weeks ago now, on a Monday in October, I think it was October, Aren't we still in October? In a Monday in October, the General Conference Annual Council convened to talk through what was known as the Unity in Mission document. This was a document that had generated a huge amount of interest. The delegates came from all over the world. There was a great deal of discussion going into the actual presentation of the document as to whether or not it would be. The delegates met and discussed it for, I think, about 3 hours. Was it 3 hours? Yeah.
It was good. Wow. 5 minutes.
It was 5 or 6 hours. Well, it just seemed like 3 to me, because time always, flies when you're having fun. The delegates met. They talked for 5 or 5.5 hours, I guess, and then voted on whether or not that document would be implemented. The outcome of the vote was 184 opposed, 114 in favor. No, it was 184 opposed
To return.
to, pardon me. You're right. You're putting me on the right track. The vote was 184 in favor of returning it, 114 opposed. Thank you. That's good. There was a lot of pre-work that came into the annual council. That included a document that the North American Division produced and submitted to the General Conference Executive that was subsequently rejected. Now, I'm going to say this as carefully as I can. A gentleman came to me some time ago and he said he was in San Antonio when the vote was taken. And he said he concluded no matter which way you flipped it, the majority of the delegates voted against giving divisions the opportunity, or authorizing the divisions to, I thought you wanted to talk already. They voted against authorizing the divisions to have discussions and formulate their own policies with regards to ordination of women. He said, while I didn't agree with the vote, I accepted the vote. But what became very offensive to me, he said, was that people cheered and jeered after the vote. I'm going to say this carefully, but I want you to understand what I'm about to say. The fact that the document was referred back does not mean the discussion is over. And this really, to say it carefully, this really is no time for cheering or jeering. I think our role as the North American Division is to recognize that the world church is still discussing a matter. And while I think we have some very profound beliefs on this document or on the process, right now there really is nothing happening other than a document was referred. So I'm going to ask you, you can react to what you understand, or you may ask questions, or you may question us. You can feel free to do any of that. I'm just asking you to do it in a prayerful, careful manner. One of the things I think that you realize when you sit on a committee like this, or that we ought to realize, is that we are part of a world church. And the North American division, which is the mother division of all the divisions, comprises between 6 and 7% of the membership of the church. So what we need to always keep in mind is that by God's grace, we will be a part of the church, and we will try to find the solutions that are there. Even though we have 6 or 7%, our world brethren are open to listening to us. They are. And the kinder, the more Christ-like we are, I think the more apt they are to listen to our concerns. So and in saying this, you heard my speech the other day. Being godly Christians does not mean we just don't talk. Being godly Christians, we express our concerns and we share what we feel, but we just do it in a Christ-like manner. So what I'm hoping in this discussion is that we can have as much discussion of this as you wish. We had actually allowed for 4 hours. Originally, the thought was if the document passes, we may need 4 hours and more. But the document didn't pass. And I'm not sure we need 4 hours to discuss this. What we were discussing this morning, friends, was of far greater impact and import than what is on the table before you right now. That is not to diminish the discussion of the world church. But I will say something very clearly to you, and I was trying to say it yesterday as well. This division is about mission. And the missional issues before us demand that we have serious discussions and take time doing them. We really had about 5 things on the agenda this morning. We did 1. And that's fine. We were happy for that discussion. So, now, Elder Bryant, did the members here receive an electronic copy of the document?
Yes, it should have been in your agenda. And if you go to that agenda item and click on it, you should have access to the document.
Now, that was a how many page document?
14 page.
So how long ago was it sent to them?
I'm not following you, Mr. Chair. Could you be more specific?
No, I just want to know when you sent it to them.
We sent it out. Actually, we've sent it twice. We sent it out on last Thursday, and we had sent it out, I think, earlier that week on Sunday or maybe the previous Friday.
So normally speaking, there would have been enough time to read the document. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yes, Brother Chairman, that's correct.
That's all I wanted to know. Now, I'm not doing that to joke. I just want to make sure you've all had an opportunity to access the document. And we are doing this because we know there are questions. We have had one union that has even said, if it's not on the agenda, we are requesting that it be on the agenda. So we are opening the floor now for discussion. Let us do it in a kind way, but please feel free to express, as Christians, your beliefs. Now, we did have prayer, didn't we? If at any point, and the prayer interveners, please, if at any point we're generating more light than heat, you know what your job is. You are the OSHA officers. You will take care of us. Yes, sir, right at the mic, the center mic.
Stuart Pepper, Pennsylvania Conference, Columbia Union. Earlier today, I noticed in Alex's report that the numbers of the people leaving the church were dramatically up in the year 2016. Did you notice that in your report? I wish I'd taken a picture of it so I could verify it. Another young man got up here to the mic and he said, I feel like I've got another 1 or 2 years left in me. And when he said those words, I almost sat here in tears because I happen to be the father of 3 children who thankfully right now are still members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. But this affects our mission. You say that we're all about mission, and when I have a son who is 29 years old, 30 years old, 29 years old still. I have a daughter who just graduated from Andrews who's struggling with this. I have another daughter who is at Southern Adventist University right now who is struggling with this concept. And I know you can't change that because these votes are taken by a world church, and I understand that. And I so wish last year my son could have been here to hear this body on this issue, not the unity document, but the issue that underlies the unity document. And I want to encourage people. I don't know how to say this in passion because I don't cry, but I do inside. And that is that as we fail to be accepting as a church, our young people are growing up in a world with a totally different worldview than some of our older people have grown up in. And it is impacting our ability not only to reach new people groups, new people, it's impacting our ability to maintain those that we have. Again, I feel fortunate as a parent that none of my kids have abandoned the church. But we have frank discussions in my family, and they all struggle with the church on this issue. The idea that we disrupt the unity of this church to the place where someone at the top could reach down below the next. We've always done it. You know, the church disciplines its members. The conference disciplines its pastors. The union disciplines the conference officials. The next level up always does it. When you break that barrier down, there will be no room for differences in our church. And if there's no room for differences, then there will be no cultural room in our church once somebody ever gets in charge that decides to use that power to go beyond the barrier. And so this unity document disturbs me because it affects our mission and it affects our ability to retain our own. Anyway, I've said enough. I don't know that you need to address that. I'm just voicing a concern.
I appreciate what you said. Thank you. Yes, on mic 1.
Daniel Honoré, Northeastern Conference of the Atlantic Union Conference. I have, first of all, words of appreciation for the leadership of our division, for the way you conducted yourselves and the way you addressed the issue. When I read and saw the nature of this document, I do have serious concerns. I believe that as a body, we need to pray for the leadership of the church. I pray for Pastor Ted Wilson because I know his responsibility is not an easy one. And we need to do all that we can to affirm our leaders. How can we as leaders expect to lead and have people and not have people challenge us if we are tearing down our leadership? So I appreciate the General Conference leadership. But my concern with the approach that has been taken is that it is not a unity document. It is a uniformity document. Yes. And unity does not mean uniformity. I want to see my church grow. There's nothing anyone can do to me to get me to leave the Adventist church. If you kick me out, I'll still be on church on Sabbath, sitting in the pew somewhere. That's my lifelong commitment. And I will consider myself to have failed if my children and children's children don't carry on this message, which I inherited from my parents, who were first-generation Adventists. I believe that no matter what happens, and you have wisely stated today that it's not a time for gloating or celebration, because this is far from over. It's time for reflection. It's time for study. In 1 Kings 12:24, I find a specific message. We love to speak about the Elijah message and the remnant message and the 3 angels message. But there's a little obscure prophet in 1 Kings 12 called Shemaiah. And the message that God gave to him was, do not fight against your brethren. That's when Judah and Israel were about to go to war. Every man return and go home. We don't need a civil war in this church that's going to destroy this church. There will be no winners if this church gets into a civil war. It will be deplorable. It will be ugly. It will open the gates of young people and young adults and older and present generations to leave the church. So we need a prayerful approach. We need godly counsel from each other. We need to explore the possibility that unity in our church can exist without uniformity. And that's my gut reaction. I'm glad that the document was referred back because we would be living in a much different church today. Thank you.
Thank you. I am going to say that I forgot to mention we want to give each person 3 minutes to speak. And I believe the timer is somewhere. And if you can honor the 3 minutes, we'd appreciate it. We think 2 minutes is a little too short, but don't take time off him.
They've given you
Yeah. Whoever did that is going to get smacked. Please reset the clock so that Elder Corkum can have 3 minutes. Please, go ahead.
Ken Corkum, Newfoundland, Canadian Union. I have 2 areas I'd like to speak to as I study the document and as I listen to the annual council. The first has to do with signing. And I assume you're taking suggestions and we'll think about it as you go forward. I grew up with the philosophy that my dad instilled in me that your word is as good as your signature. And when I became a Seventh-day Adventist and a leader, my word is as good as my signature. And to have to sign a document that I will be loyal to the doctrines of the church really goes against my grain. Now, it's brought up that the argument can be that we have to sign it for conflict of interest. Well, that's in the finance side, and I don't mind that. But when it comes up with I need to sign to say that I'm loyal, I have a struggle with that. But I would pass a question on, because I had in my home this past week someone from one of our universities who happened to be a professor in religious studies that said that the professors in North American Division were required to sign a loyalty document on doctrine. And I wonder if you could ask Barry Blackmore to speak to that. The second area that I have is, as I study the document, and it was brought to the floor by at annual council by Lowell Cooper, that there is nothing in the document that relates to constituency. It all relates to individual leaders. So my question is this the first round or is it the ultimate? Is there potential that if this doesn't work, that within bylaws, that the General Conference can go one step further and can address constituencies? Thank you.
Those are good questions. I don't have good answers. I think you pose questions that need to be considered and responded to. And before any final vote would be taken, they would need to be answered sufficiently, because what I sensed with the vote several weeks ago was that people did have many unanswered questions, and they were not prepared to vote until the questions were answered. And, well, I mean, they were prepared to vote, but it was not in favor of supporting the document. One does not know what could happen. But I don't, is Larry here? Okay, Gordon Beats is going to talk to that. Gordon Beats is an employee of the North American Division and the liaison between the NAD and what is known as ACU, the Association of Adventist Colleges and Universities. Larry, you can come and address it as well. But Gordon, you go ahead and address it.
Well,
There is, the IBMTE is asking for a process of endorsement for theology teachers that would require signatures on the behalf of theology teachers. The North American Division is asking for, and the policy allows, an alternative procedure. And we are in the process of formulating the alternative procedure that would not be quite as explicit and restrictive as the one that the General Conference uses in overseas divisions.
And we have taken that through AQ. AQ this week has outlined that. We have sat down with General Conference, with Lisa, and she has looked it over and has no major qualms with what we've presented. And so now it just needs to go through the formal process.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. If we feel comfortable in requiring our theology teachers to sign something, I think it makes null and void our opposition individually to stand up and oppose that. Yeah, I just feel uncomfortable having to sign that because I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I'm loyal to the doctrine, and our bylaws says if you become an officer, you're loyal to all those, to the North American Division and General Conference, and to have to sign besides that, I just find I'm uncomfortable with that. The second question, maybe I didn't say it correctly, but I would assume that the officers or legal counsel in North American Division, looking at the bylaws, would know whether or not the General Conference has the potential of going further organizationally to touch lower levels if it's not addressed presently. If they have the potential in bylaws to do this, this may just be first round. If they don't have the potential of doing it,
yeah, I misunderstood your question the first time.
Yeah. Whether bylaws permitted.
The General Conference cannot move beyond the division level without the approval of constituencies. So the General Conference could, and this is a part of the, I'm not sure if it's policy or bylaw, the General Conference does have, they did vote that a few years ago, the authority to call a union session. But does the General Conference have an authority to move into that union session and demand that the union would react in a certain way, such as signatures and so on? I think we would get into some serious bylaws difficulty on that. Karnak, would you like to answer that? I do want to say before Karnak speaks that if the General Conference were to call a union session without the union committee, I would really like to sell tickets.
How much?
About $100 a head, and every seat would be taken.
I think, quite frankly, we're speculating into uncharted territory here. Clearly, the General Conference bylaws outline certain procedures as it relates to the General Conference. Union bylaws or conference bylaws likewise outline procedures for those organizations. If the model bylaws are followed as they are written, then there is provision, as you say, for the higher organizations to request the executive committees of the unions or the conferences to call a session. If the session is not called, it does give the right to the higher organizations to then call a session. But it's still dependent on the constituency. Any issue that comes forward is going to be dealt with by the constituency that is organized in that particular territory.
Right. But
we're speculating into areas that really is a waste of our time to speculate. I think what we ought to focus on, how do we move forward?
You know, let me, Karnak, before you go away, come back, please. But you need to understand, for everyone here, you need to understand that there are some nuances here that can be misunderstood. Now tell us about the relationship of the General Conference and the divisions.
The divisions are part of the General Conference. They don't exist in and of themselves. They are extensions of the General Conference authorized to carry out the work of the General Conference in a particular geographic territory. So the territory that's been assigned to North America, for example, is outlined in the General Conference working policy that states the United States, Canada, Bermuda, and the related
Guam, Micronesia.
Micronesia and St. Pierre and Miquelon.
So in this territory, the General Conference is?
The North American Division is the General Conference in those territories.
But the North American Division does not have a constituency. And that's the difference. Now, you know, I made this statement a few years ago, and someone thought I was giving a signal to unions and conferences to go ahead and utilize their constituencies. I'm just pointing out a fact. I'm not trying to egg anybody on to do anything. So the division has no constituency. We have an executive committee, and that's who you are. So.
And the division has no bylaws or constitution.
Right. We did in 1913. And 2 years later, it was, we had it in 1916 and it was removed in 18?
13.
Okay, 13 and 18. We'll get it right. We had in 1913 and it was removed in 1918. Ken?
Yep. I feel those questions are very relevant in that when you read the document, it's very obvious that constituencies are left out. And you said there's no way that could have been avoided. It was, from my perspective, intentional, that it related to individual leaders. And the ultimate conclusion is you're an individual leader. If you're not in harmony, you lose the ability to attend meetings and to be on committees, which is really basically a slap in the hand. So I wanted to know, by bylaws, was there a depth that they had not gone in the document? Because it appeared like it related only to the individual worker, and they would lose representation, and some people would count that as small cost.
It is speculation, but it is possible.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I think Randy Robinson was next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question. The document was referred back to some body. I'm not sure what body that was, first of all.
I think it was the Unity and Mission Committee. Oversight. Committee. Yeah, Oversight Committee.
And my second question is, how do we, I'm not sure who we is defined as exactly, but how do we give input to that body to consider options, perspectives, for when that document is brought back, apparently, according to our world president, at the
annual council
next year?
The General Conference has a process, a flow of information that starts with committees. It can start with the president. It can go to a committee. Then that committee would recommend it to their administrative committee. From there to probably what is known as GCDO, which is the General Conference and Division Officers. There's a step in there where the division presidents meet together to dialogue and give input. Generally, there has not been, prior to annual council and the meetings surrounding annual council, opportunity for a lot of outside input. That generally they keep that to the committee, and then they reveal it in steps. That's the way they did it this time.
Okay, that I was concerned about that process, I guess, to put it nicely.
That didn't answer your question the way you would like it answered.
Not totally. I am concerned about the level of input that a body such as this or other interested bodies would have to give to that document. And the fact that it was, I don't know how widely it was, this particular document was distributed to anybody. I'm not sure how widely it was distributed. But
It was not
apparently
widely
it was
distributed,
not
not
widely
at all.
distributed until the very second is being discussed. I have concerns about that process, and I guess that's what drives my question.
Well, I mean, I think we can,
Mechanism that we can give input to.
I think that we can certainly reflect that to the leadership of the General Conference. I believe that that is very possible, and we will make note of it and share it. Yes, sir, you're next.
Well, I have a question. I came to year-end meetings when I was secretariat, and it was the year that they shared the theology of ordination findings, the study committee. Mm-hmm. And something was said, and forgive me, I don't remember the name of the individual who shared the findings of the report, but I remember him saying something to the effect that one of the things they discussed in that committee was that they found that there is no evidence in Scripture for pastoral ordination, only the ordination that we give our elders. And in reading this document and seeing where we are now, I just wonder if we have made the situation worse by not just saying, let's just do away with our church tradition and embrace biblical ordination or laying on of hands, whatever you want to call it, and go back to the elders. Would we, if we're talking about a way forward, why don't we just, let's go back to Scripture and do it the way they did it. It means that all of us that are ordained, we have to just step back and give back the magical power you gave us when we were ordained. And we'll just have the same power that the elders have, but it would be biblical. And this is all about women's ordination. That's all that this is about. I appreciate your Christian demeanor in all of this, but you know, some people are getting a little frustrated because of all the Christian demeanor that we're showing. And pray for me. But so it's just, I guess it's a question.
Well, we are a Christian church, and we ought to have a little Christian demeanor.
I understand. Forgive me.
It all fits.
Yes, I'm sorry. So my question is there a possibility that if you're thinking about a way forward, to say let's go back to some of those findings and say there is only one form of ordination in Scripture, and that's what we did for our elders. And we would, I think, maybe go around some of them, maybe not, but it's just a question of the possibility of that.
If it was my company, that's what we'd do. You're next. Yes, sir.
Well, I guess speaking, Neil Bilhoff, Dakota Conference
Good,
President.
thank you.
Speaking of religious tradition and doing things in a spiritual and religious way, my concern centers around transparency in my church. It appears that we have, well, it was quite obvious at the fall council that the document was hidden from most of us until the last minute. Is this how we do business in the church? And is this, I guess, we're talking about bylaws and we're talking about all that. So is there nothing said about being open and honest with the people of the church? This is a question.
I think it is always appropriate that we should be transparent.
And when we're not...
You know, the rule of thumb that I use is a simple one. It goes like this. If we, in our leadership, are not being transparent, become obstreperous. That is very difficult. I mean, I'm saying become very difficult. I believe that if the constituent groups are uncomfortable with what you're talking about, that people ought to stand to their feet and object.
Okay. I've compared notes, I guess, with a few conference presidents while I've been here, and I think we all agree if we did that to our executive committee, what happened at fall council, probably most of us would be gone. And I'm serious.
Mm-hmm. No, I believe
Our
that.
committee would just say, you know what, I think it's time for a new person. This gets to the accountability question. Who holds the General Conference accountable for transparency and for things like that?
The General Conference in session and the annual council in between.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Daniel Stojanovic, Canada. I would first say that I'm praying almost every day that God helps us to find a solution, a reconciliation between GC and not only our division, but other divisions also. At the same time, because I'm fully convinced that God has solutions. I know. At the same time, I share from my heart that if one day I have to sign some documents in order to be qualified to be an administrator of the church, I would prefer to resign. And I'm telling very seriously, I grew up in Eastern Europe, and I was kicked out of school 4 years because I didn't sign some documents. And if we start with the signature of documents, it means that my main qualification right now, that is member in good standing, this is who I am, member in good standing, will not be sufficient. I need to add another layer, which means to become an administrator in good standing. This is what the signature requires of me. And if I am not good enough, an oversight committee can send back my name to my union or conference or anything so that I will be replaced. You understand how it happens. So the day we installed 2 different criteria, one for members in good standing, and administrators, officers in good standing, then we will just go against a reformation that we are celebrating right now. We are celebrating that was so totally opposed to the difference between clergy and laity. I don't want the distinction, I don't know, my English is not probably correct, but distinction between clergy and laity in the Bible doesn't exist. I believe in how to say, universal priesthood. We are all priests, members, elders, and pastors and administrators. So may God help us to avoid, to create what is not necessarily in harmony with our identity.
Thank you. Okay, over here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Daniel Cho from Ontario, Canada. I just want to make a few comments. And first, it was mentioned again about young people, the fear about young people about this issue, them leaving. And like I said last year, there are many young people across this division who support the General Conference session vote, who are very concerned about this issue of respect for the General Conference session vote. I just want to say that we have to do what's right, we have to do what's biblical, and leave the consequences to God. I think the fundamental question here is, does the actions of the General Conference in session matter? And although the Phase 2 Unity document has been referred back, we still have on our hands an issue that there are instances of non-compliance within our division, especially on the issue of women's ordination to gospel ministry. Where's the transparency about that? Where's the accountability, is my question. There have been ordinations, to my understanding, there have been ordinations of women in unions within this division, and before and after the 2015 General Conference session. Also, at least in one of our conferences, the presidency is out of compliance as well. So what are we doing to address these unilateral actions? It has been stated that we in the NAD believe in unity, that we are not in rebellion, and do not want to divide the church. And I really appreciate those sentiments. But is that indeed the case? I can't help but wonder. I'm struck by the seeming absence of discussion or concern by this body on how to address these non-compliance issues. If we truly care about unity and truly respect the General Conference in session, should this not be our primary concern, more so than resisting efforts to bring about unity? I honestly can't help but feel that we're being a little bit disingenuous. If we stand by and do nothing when voted actions and policies are violated, it's to undermine the God-given governance structure that we've been given, and I believe to indeed disrespect God himself. We were given 1 full year in phase 1, and those entities who are not in compliance were given plenty of time to reverse course. Yet, as far as I can tell, nothing has changed, or little. So my question is, what are we going to do? So, Mr. Chairman, I would actually like to make a motion. And so the motion is, in the spirit of church unity and respect for the decisions of the General Conference in session, and recognizing that the General Conference in session, with delegates from all over the world, is the highest human body that we have for settling disputable matters among its divisions and their entities in the church, we, the North American Division Executive Committee, as part of the General Conference, as the GC Legal Counsel said, directs that all entities that we serve to bring their practice into harmony with all the NAD, GC policy, and with the 2015 vote of the World Church on Ordination. I so move. Thank you.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a second. We now have a motion on the floor. Have we got the wording of it?
Give us a moment to get the wording on the screen.
Okay, we'll put the wording up on the screen. And we...
I'm wondering if the person who made the motion could come and work with our secretary, and if we can make it more succinct so we might be able to put it on the screen.
Okay, we can open the floor for discussion. Please identify yourself. And
Dean Corden with the Iowa Missouri Conference.
We need a little more volume on mic 1. You may have to just pick that thing up, Dean.
Okay. I have a concern, and if my voice is trembling, it's because I'm nervous. It's not because I'm frustrated.
We are all together as a family. You just don't worry. You can say whatever you need to say.
Frustrated.
And we're going to love you before and after.
Okay. I have a deep concern that even today, comments that are being made reflect no understanding or little understanding of what it means to have a Republican form of government. We are not a democracy, nor are we a hierarchy. We stand on the shoulders of Martin Luther, Wycliffe, Huss, Jerome, Zwingli. We can't call ourselves Protestants out of one side of our mouth and out of the other side of our mouth use the very arguments Dr. Eck used against Luther. We got to go one way or the other. You cannot mingle these forms of government. The concept in a Republican form of government that a general session of any entity can become the highest authority is absolutely not true. The General Conference in session, with all of us there as delegates, are not free to vote whatever we want to vote. We've been elected by constituencies that have constitutions. The General Conference has a constitution. We cannot vote policies outside of the Constitution. We're bound by our own Constitution. If the Constitution doesn't work, then we're required to take that before the people and change the Constitution with the 2/3 vote. We just can't take votes and say, well, we're the majority and we voted it, and that stands. A republic means we're representative form. bound by a constitution that protects the rights of the minority. That has been the secret of growth for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And if we move away from that, we'll doom our own institution.
Thank you. Okay. Over here.
My name is Elena Knapp, and I'm from the Lake Union. And I'm not one of the prayer people, but I think it'd be great if we could pray.
Okay. We'll get our prayer conveners up here, and you tell us how you wish us to pray. We can pray with an individual, or you can ask us to pray in groups, or whatever you so desire.
If we could actually do groups and pray with 1 to 2 people in front or beside or around us. And then either myself or another prayer convener can come up and do one final prayer to close.
Okay. Okay, let's go into groups of 2. Those at the mic, stay where you are. I mean, you can pray, but then we'll respect you back at the mic.
We'll just do Jesus since that's your partner, since I need to start. Good after, okay? I also want to pray for business, church.
And welcome back. Right now, the delegates, as you saw, are taking a moment to pray. We're discussing the unity document. It's been an issue that's been coming a long time. Obviously, there's a lot of close connection to the ordination of women ministry.
Right.
And so, as Elder Dan Jackson instructed at the beginning, he asked, there are certain people there in the room that when they feel that he said there's more heat than fire, I think is the way he described it, that, they take a moment to pray, and that's exactly what they're doing right now.
Yeah, so they've broken into groups, small groups, and they'll be praying together for the next few minutes. If you've been following this at all, it has been a heated discussion. We know that annual council met in the general conference several weeks ago,
right.
And this unity document that you're hearing being referred to, that was voted to be sent back to the...
Right, it was sent to the Unity Oversight Committee, I think it was. The committee that issued the document was sent back. And basically what it would do is it would require the members of the General Conference Executive Committee to sign this document, to sign before, to say that they're in full compliance with all the General Conference bylaws and church doctrines, etc. And so there's been a lot of discussion about that. We're talking about it here. And as you saw, a motion was made on the floor by one of the younger delegates asking that the unions in the North American Division that are not in compliance with the vote on the ordination of women that took place in San Antonio would be brought into compliance. And so before a vote takes place on that vote, they're going to have prayer.
Right. Okay. We'll go back into the auditorium and join them now.
Okay.
Our words, our actions as we continue this conversation, so that when we speak, that our words show the passion and our love for you. We ask that you continue to be with us as we continue this conversation, and help us to remember that you love us, and that you are love, and then the words we speak are words that show love to you and to our brothers and sisters around us. We ask these things in your name we pray. Amen.
All right. We will go to those people, who are at the microphones already. Over to mic 3. I think we were calling that mic 3.
Okay. Yeah, hello. My name is Kwesi Ansa Adu from the SDACC. I want to ask the chair, Mr. Chairman, whether we need possibly, I want just to find out maybe from the secretary, whether we need to have the motion clearly written so we could.
Yeah, we're trying to do that right now.
Okay, so I'll wait and see the motion first, then I'm ready to come.
Okay.
Thank you.
They're working on it now.
All right. Microphone 1.
Mr. Chairman, I question the appropriateness of this motion. So it's really a point of order. I believe that you prefaced the discussion this afternoon by stating that several hours of our scheduled time had been allocated to have an open and honest dialogue on an issue that is of great concern to many of us. I believe that this motion sidetracks us, and we could take the entire afternoon discussing this motion, which would take us away from the agreed agenda item that we all consented to, that we would have an open dialogue. I believe we are an open church. We can discuss ideas without talking about personalities, without disrespecting each other. But since you did open up the afternoon so that we could have the discussion, to have this moment come forward at this point, I find inappropriate. I believe we should have our discussions, and at the end of discussion, we could entertain motions. But it's too early just to have 2 or 3 people speak and come with this type of motion. Is an oppressive motion, something that we should not encourage in our deliberations. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We do allow our members to speak and to move, and it is up to the body to react and to respond. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect to the maker of the motion and the person who offered the second, I think the point that is brought to us by this motion is one that probably is not even necessary. This is an issue that is troubling the world church. It's not an issue of the General Conference. It's an issue of the world church. And it belongs at the General Conference in the annual council meeting. That's where it belongs. I personally believe that we would be better served if we were to keep the discussion open, receive all the input possible, because we need all the light we can get. And then, with the help of the Holy Spirit, if you can transmit that to us, we would be probably better serving the church with that. So I move that we table this motion.
Okay, moved to table. There is no discussion on a motion to table. Do you have your red voting cards? Or we have clickers if you want to use the clickers. Okay, we're... Andrea, are we able to use the...
I don't know about the projecting on the screen, and I don't know where George is. Oh, there it is. We're good.
Got it.
Are we able to do it?
We're good. We're good. Yeah.
Okay. All right, please take your voting devices out. I think as they showed you the other day, when I tell you to proceed, you will proceed. A is for yes, B is for no, C is to abstain. Okay. Yes means we're in favor of tabling the motion. No means we're not in favor, and C means I don't want to vote. Okay? Let us say, has everybody got their device out? Okay? There is no discussion. No, there is no discussion unless it's a technical discussion on the A and B thing.
What's it mean to table it?
To table it means it is taken off this agenda and is put into limbo until at some future time a motion would be made to take it off the table. And it could stay there forever unless that motion is made. And that's a point of order, and that was a good point of order. Thank you for asking. All right, please take your voting device, and if you are in favor of putting this matter, the vote that is, on the table, that is taking it away from the agenda or from the table as such, you will push yes. If you're opposed, you will say no. Okay, please vote. I think you have 30 seconds. Okay, there is your answer. Would somebody please read those numbers? I can't see that far.
186, 25 no, 186 yes, 25 no, and 3 abstain.
All right, the motion is tabled. We will move on in the discussion. I think we had two people, the motion was taken off, so we're not discussing the motion. We're having an open discussion that we started off having. So please.
Todd Pasco, Oregon Conference. In the Steps to Christ chapter you guys gave us, this is written: there is no chapter in our experience too dark for him to read. There is no perplexity too difficult for him to unravel. Tuesday we will come to the 500th anniversary of Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformation, the 95 Theses nailed to a door. And for a couple years, the gentleman who mentioned the ordination, what the theologians had found about that. I am merely a layperson, so...
merely should be stricken from the record.
Well, I'm not ordained. Let me put it that way. I'm not ordained, and I appreciate that.
Well, you're a minister of God, though.
For others. So, nevertheless, in humility, that I may not know the ramifications of what I'm about to say, I am asking that on Tuesday we have a motion to, in the North American Division, do away with ordination altogether, for the simple purpose of unity in our division and taking this issue off the table in terms of divisiveness that it has had for us. And Martin Luther had priesthood of all believers and sola scriptura. And if it's not in the Bible, the most offensive thing to me is hearing policy equated with scripture coming out of the annual council. So to that extent, I'd like to mark the 500th anniversary with that motion, but I do defer to all the people ordained to give some thought and prayer to it between now and Tuesday. Thank you.
I really I appreciate the spirit in which you made the comment. I will say that ultimately that probably would generate way more heat than light, because the unions need to deal with the ordination question as opposed to the division. But the comment and the spirit in which it was made, and will all the ordained people please move to the right? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Dave Gemmel, work for North American Division, Ministerial Department. I would like to suggest a way forward that would not violate the vote that was taken in San Antonio and would also accomplish the needs that we have in North American Division for mission. And that is, every time the word ordained occurs in our policy book, we include the word /commissioned.
We did try that on for size much earlier.
I realize that, but a lot has happened since that time, and I would just like to offer that again for discussion.
I think I'm being informed by the body. I appreciate your comment, but I am going to be informed by the body who just tabled a previous motion. I'm a little reticent to take motions. I think we said we wanted a discussion, but it wasn't a motion. I know. It was a suggestion. And I think if you have followed my thinking over the years, you know I might even agree with that. But yes, sir.
Spencer Page from Burman University in Canada. Just in light of some remarks that were given throughout our discussion, we have conferred, and it is the opinion, rather, of all the representatives from AIA and all the representatives who stand for the youth of the North American Division, that the body consider all of the representatives' opinions, and that we not let the remarks of one or two skew the committee's opinion on what our stance may be on this document and on the issues of concerns.
I think that's a good point, and I think that's true in every point, that we want people to feel comfortable to make motions, to do as they will. But the reality is that it is the body that speaks, and it must be the whole body that speaks. And I just won't go on in the explanation. Yes, ma'am.
Elena Knapp, Lake Union. And I just want to, I know this may seem a little odd, but it's very hard for a young person to stand up and maybe say something that they know the majority isn't maybe in agreement with. And I just want to appreciate the young man that did that, because it's not easy.
And you know, that's a good statement. I think it was last year there was a similar statement, and at that time I addressed it by expressing appreciation for his willingness to do that. I feel the same way today, and thank you for raising it. We need to be able to look at people who don't agree with us, or I don't agree with you, or you with me. We need to be able to look at each other in the eye and say, you're my brother. We don't agree, but that's all right. You're my brother, and nothing's going to change that. And we need to respect every person's point of view. We will not advance God's work disliking each other or hissing or jeering each other because of an opinion. We need to accept each other's opinion. Yes, sir. Tell us who you are and where are you from?
Douglas Pereira from the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada. I want to talk about the document that the General Conference put out. Unfortunately, my home division, at the beginning, I was not born in the North American Division. But now I'm glad to be here, because on my division, we don't have such a document to sign, but there's the spirit of that document, that you don't have freedom to express or be different. And I'm not in favor of this document, because the freedom that we have here is so important. And today, I can think, I can express myself, and I can try with the support of the freedom that we have on my context, on my conference, on my union. And as a local pastor, when I saw that document, a red flag came out, right? To say where we are going, right? We need unity and mission. We're not looking for uniformity. And I think that document goes against mission and unity, in my humble opinion. So I'm not in favor of that document. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Kent Walker from Central California Conference. I'm a layperson as well, so I'm going to ask a question, I guess, to remove my ignorance. And those of you that know the answer.
You're not ignorant. You just don't know.
That is a more positive way of putting it.
Yeah.
Thank you. What authority do we as a body have over the unions?
That's a very interesting question. That is a very interesting question. The division is comprised of the unions. So is the General Conference. The General Conference is made up of unions. Certainly, this body has the right to recommend to unions. It really, it does not have the ability to dictate to the unions how they will act. And I'll give you a little history on this. It will be useful. Both the presidents of both presidents of the two unions who voted to proceed with ordination without regard to gender, both presidents talked to me before they did that. My statement was similar to the statement I made on the floor of both meetings. This is against policy. However, I will pray that God's Spirit will guide you. So my role is to say to them, I do not have the authority to say, you will not do this. But I did have the right to say, here's the policy, you know that there will be a problem, but I will pray that God's Spirit will guide you. So that the division works on the basis of collegiality and on the basis of working out things together. The policies that you have in the policy book do bind us together, and they bind us to, especially when it comes to the financial policies. If you start breaking those up, well, I don't understand, but I will just simply say they bind us together because we are the ones that made them.
So then the Pacific Union, which I'm a part of, which you informed them at the constituency meeting, is out of compliance with the NAD policy or the GC policy?
Well, I think it's both, wouldn't you, Brian?
Actually, the ordination of women
that's true.
is not in church policy.
There is no policy.
It is a voted action of the church. And so that's one of the nuances about this discussion. There are some implications in policy, but there are no direct statements in policy on the ordination of women, but it's been voted at a general conference session. So the document that we're discussing had also voted actions of the church, and it was trying to cover those types of things.
So it was voted then not. So it's not a policy, but it's a voted action not to ordain women.
It comes out of the general conference session.
Okay, so that informs what I want to say then. My main concern is unity. Moving forward, that's my concern, that we're working together with our brothers and sisters in the world church. So what I would like, and I don't know if we have the authority to do this, but perhaps we can make a recommendation. I was hoping that we could find a way as a body here today to recommend. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to get ahead of what's going to happen in a year, and maybe we can make a recommendation as the NAD to resolve our differences before we have to again deal with this document to the point where we sort of diffuse the situation as the NAD by making a recommendation to the GC. This is a way we see of fixing our disagreement here. Could this be a way forward for us? That's my desire, for us to be proactive and find a way forward that we can avoid any more.
And that's very positive.
Thank you.
We did try to do that at the request of the General Conference President. We did submit a document. But, you know, I am not at all opposed to trying again. And we would be happy to do that.
Thank you.
At your council. Okay, I'm going to come over here.
Leon Brown, from Nevada, Utah Conference, President of Nevada, Utah. You know, strange things happened to me on the way to session, annual council the other day. Nevada, Utah was exposed to the shooting. So I was coming back from the events that occurred at the shooting, and Monday I was flying in. I got on the plane of Southwest, and it was the newest plane they had. I'm just tell you a quick story. It's the newest plane they had. And when I looked at the cockpit, there was a female pilot. And I just thought to myself, man, and the flight attendant said, she is really, really good. Then we hit a bump, and he said, man, that's why I like female pilots. And at the end of the flight, brand new plane Southwest has, I looked in the cockpit, and what I missed was both of the pilots were female. I'd never seen that before. I've never flown a flight. And I get to this meeting that we were having in annual council, and we're talking about female pastors. And the whole thing just boggled my mind because I thought, what would Southwest do if they had to sit around and figure out how to take these female pilots? What certification would they have to give female pilots and male pilots? And I thought to myself, that's really, really interesting. And we're sitting here discussing this amazing issue, and we know that God is calling women into ministry, and we know that because the thing that solidified it for me was Ellen White is being preached and quoted every Sabbath in all of our churches. I come from a conference, I'm the president of a conference who, as part of the Pacific Union, we have 7 conferences, and only 3 of them voted to ordain women. Am I right?
That's right.
And yet we're seamless, we're one. There's no discussion, you guys from Pacific Union, you're here, there's no discussion about who's going to do what. So in answer to the young man's question about unity, there is already unity. There is no discussion, there's no argument. We work together. We're one family or one team. And when I come to the annual council in these meetings, we have these great big discussions and arguments. It confuses me because I'm concerned about the fact that what we're allowing the devil to do is to distract us from the mission. And what Sandy said to me the other day was so amazing. In Pacific Union, mission is taking place. Amen. We're baptizing. I thank God just the other day we baptized 97, Pastor Bird, 97 people. Mission is taking place in North America. Amen. And Elder, I do not want us to lose focus on the fact that you are, by God's grace, God has allowed you to lead a mission, a group of people that is actually doing ministry. Yes. We're doing ministry. And I know there are going to be differences of opinion, but we've decided we know how to stay together. We just got to do it.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, over to the mic 1.
Lisa Beardsley Hardy, Director of Education, General Conference. The majority of executive committee members were uncomfortable with the document as presented, and that's why it was sent back. However, there was one voted change before it was sent back, and that's on page 9, line 5 and 6. And that change was to change the words openly advocate for positions to openly work in opposition to. The gentleman who just talked about the need to speak to issues, that's important. That's why we have General Conference Executive Committee. That's why we have these. There is a General Conference Policy Committee, and every year policy changes. The General Conference working policy changes. I think Bob Lemon gave the best definition of what policy is, and he said it's the agreement that we have about how we do business. The women's ordination thing is not a matter of policy. It's already been pointed out. It was a vote taken by General Conference. And this document was not for every employee of the church or every even member of the church. It was for members of the General Conference Executive Committee. So personally, I don't have any issue in making a public affirmation of my willingness to uphold policy as long as the right is preserved to speak about changing policy. I think that's essential. We have to do that, and we need to have vigorous debate. And that was voted. That change was voted before this document was sent back. Just a word about the consequence, though. I think that's where we need to focus our effort. What's the consequence of not following policy? So in the area of GCAS, for instance, there's a letter that's written to management when policy is not followed, and it provides directives on what to do to remediate those issues. When we work with schools in accreditation, we identify recommendations, and then we give the organization or the school or the institution time to come into compliance with policy. And the time has to be there because it has to be an organic solution fitted for that organization or that school. So in general principle, I'm supportive of policy. Where policy is not working anymore, we need to address it. But I don't think that anarchy serves anybody's interest, and I appreciate that this conversation is to find a way to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I did make a comment a while ago that policy binds us. I should have made the statement, policy facilitates us working together rather than binds us. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Alex Harder. I'm from Kettering, Ohio, Columbia Union. Normally, I don't step up to the mic on these things because I don't feel that perhaps as a female that I should be the one speaking, but I have some questions that I don't understand, and so I'm going to plead my lack of knowledge, won't use the word ignorance, my lack of knowledge to share these thoughts and some questions. First, I understand that the issue, of course, is that the North American Division has unions that are non-compliant. To clarify, were the unions in North American Division non-compliant after the 2015 session?
Yes, they were not compliant.
So in other words, the vote was taken to be non-compliant after the session?
No. They voted
none,
that prior to.
So none have done it since the 2015?
Yes, they have.
Okay. So just to clarify, that there hasn't been a union that has gone ahead with a vote to be non-compliant after the GC session?
No.
The other question is, I understand that there are myriads of areas that we are non-compliant. My understanding, it's 81%? 81% of divisions, unions, conferences across the world church that are non-compliant. Are we spending this kind of time and energy on all of the areas that were non-compliant? And are all those that are non-compliant being seen as rebellious because they're non-compliant? These are questions I just don't have answers for when the families and or young adults in my congregation ask me, can you shed some light on that?
Well, I think you've asked a very good question, and I think you know the answer. That's why you're smiling right now.
A little.
But I think the answer is an obvious answer. There are many areas of non-compliance in the world.
So are all rebellious? And my answer, I'm going to answer it and say no. So then the next question is, so many...
I'm glad you answered that. That was good.
I'm going.
I like that kick. It was good. It was good.
It's
I'm just glad I wasn't standing there.
So I guess the next part is there are many times where a GC session has taken place and a union or a division decides to take exception to the voted action at a GC. Could we not do the same?
It would be inappropriate to do that because we are the General Conference. One of the things immediately following the General Conference vote, we had a meeting. Some of you were there. I stood at the microphone and said, please be assured the North American Division will not break with the decision of the General Conference. We are the General Conference in the North American Division. That does not mean that we agree with the vote. We have said repeatedly, we are living well within policy by developing an initiative to bring more and more women into pastoral roles, and we will continue to do so. But we will not advocate as a division that anyone go against the vote of the General Conference.
So, and I really appreciate you and all of you and the way that you do support women in ministry. You support me, and I appreciate that so much. And I can't thank you enough because I know you take a lot of heat because of it. I guess my question then is these other divisions and or unions and or conferences that do take exception when there is a GC session vote, why is it that we are not talking about their non-compliance? And in some of these things, it is very much against our actual beliefs. It's not even just policy, it's doctrinal. So I guess it's hard to answer that question. And I feel like this is the body that needs to grapple with how we're going to answer that. And so
we can't answer that. We are not in the position to answer that. That really is a question that the General Conference would have to answer, because we do not have the purview of the world. Our purview is the North American Division. But those are very good questions, and they should continue to be asked.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you. I appreciate the question. Yes, sir.
Daniel Cho, Canada. So I want to say I'm not trying to bring the motion back. The body has spoken, but I just want to ask just a question. How would a table motion come back to the floor?
Just someone would have to make a motion to untable the motion, and that person would have to be someone who voted in favor.
Of the motion?
No, wait a minute. Yes,
table it.
yes, yeah, they would have to be in favor of the table.
Oh, okay, I see.
It would have to be that person.
I see. Okay. And
somebody who voted in favor of the motion to table would have to make a motion to untable the motion.
Okay. All right. And just so I recognize that the body doesn't want to. But I just want to really encourage the executive committee to really think about the things I mentioned in the preamble to the motion. It just seems to me that our concerns are a little off place. As was mentioned, that there are unions or conferences that have gone on around the ordination issue in contrary to the GC session vote. And I just wonder where's the concern about that? If we're truly concerned about unity, if we truly believe in respecting the General Conference session vote, it just seems a little off. So I would just really like to just humbly encourage us to think about those things, and appreciate it.
I am not arguing with you. I will only say that it's your opinion that there's no concern.
Oh, I'm not saying there's no concern. I just think there just doesn't seem to be as much. And I'm not saying there just doesn't seem to be as much concern about and discussion about these unions. And
thank you.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you again for your willingness to speak.
Thank you.
Over here. Pastor?
Brenda Villangy, and I'm with the Ministerial Department, North American Division. As you know, this is a difficult issue for me to address because it hits my heart. And so I'm going to speak from my heart. I stand today to represent the women who are called by God. And they stand in a difficult position because they want to obey God. But on the other hand, the church that they love is not supportive. And I think what I want to address today is not just the fact that there is lack of support, but I really want to tell you that the women that I speak to on a daily basis, they are hurt. They are called names that I cannot repeat. They are degraded in their positions. Some of them are actually, they are removed, or there are attempts to remove them from their positions. It is a tough struggle. And there's the two scriptures that keep coming up in our discussions. One is, what does God require? Require is a strong word. It is to love justice, mercy, and walk humbly. And they're trying to do what God requires. The other scripture is, there'll come a day when there'll be a separation between sheep and goats. And these ladies don't want to be on the wrong side. And their requirements of what they should do. Did you feed the hungry? Did you clothe the naked? Those are the questions that they will have to report to God about. And so they want to be mission driven. These discussions are fine. I mean, we have to have them. But understand that at the end of the day, we have to report to God for what He has asked us to do. And so I am going to make a plea today that even as you have asked us in this room to respect each other and to work together, on behalf of these women, I'm going to ask that we respect them. We don't have to call names. We don't have to treat them in a negative fashion. We can have discussion. We can make decisions. But understand, we as women of the word, we are not trying to tear down this church. We are here to try to do this. There's a hurricane. How can we help? There are shootings on the street. How can we assist? There are disasters going on every day. We are at the end of time, and God is pouring out His Spirit on men and women, and we just want to do our work as God has asked us to do. Please, please, respect the ladies and allow them to do the work of God.
Thank you. Thank you. I do want to make a little comment on that, and that is, I'm going to try to be very respectful here of individuals who feel that we ought not to have women pastors, and that we certainly ought not to ordain them. I believe that these folks, many of them, have as much conviction about that as others have about the fact that there should be women pastors and that they should be ordained. And as the TOSC, or the NAD TOSC report demonstrated a few years ago, at least stated a few years ago, we believe that there are born-again, loving Christians in both camps. That there are people who are just as connected to God in both camps, as there, in one camp, as there are in the other. And that I concur with. I will, however, say very plainly, and I will repeat it again, the North American division in hiring pastors and encouraging women to enter pastoral roles is living within the confines of General Conference voted policy. Anyone who tells you differently is a liar. Those are strong words, but they are true words. Anyone who tells you that the North American division employing or encouraging women to enter pastoral ministry is in rebellion, anyone who tells you that is a liar. Because General Conference policy is very clear that women pastors are a part of the program of ministry of not only the General Conference, but the World Church. In Southern Africa, Indian Ocean Division, which is very opposed to women's ordination, they do have, their president told me recently, many pastors who are women. So let me now be specific in my comment. People who damn authorized female pastors are irresponsible, and it is disgraceful. Now, you can disagree with it, but these people take on the call of God to ministry, and you're going to call them all kinds of names that their representative can't repeat in public? If you should do that, you really don't answer to the North American division or to your conference. You just answer to God. You tell him about it. So I will stop right there. I think that's sufficient. But I'm going to go to the center microphone.
Ricardo Graham, currently serving as the president of the Pacific Union Conference in the North American Division. I'm so happy that there is mission taking place in the Pacific Union.
Amen.
Thousands of young people going to our schools, 2 colleges being supported equally by the union funds, people being baptized every Sabbath into the church that preaches the 28 fundamental beliefs of Adventism. I'm proud to be associated with the Pacific Union. Relative to the document that we are discussing, the same page that Dr. Lisa Beardsley Hardy brought before us, page 9, it says on line 36, those who do not sign the document for whatever reason will forfeit the privileges of vote, voice, and subcommittee participation. Mr. Chairman, I was very disappointed at first and then offended as I thought about it earlier after the fact when a member of the Annual Council Executive Committee requested the document to be dispersed to the committee, and then it was denied, and the next day afternoon we were given a 14-page document to disseminate. It didn't speak to transparency. It didn't speak to openness. It didn't speak to giving people a prayerful opportunity to read and examine what they had been given. I think a disservice was done to our church by doing that. Mr. Chairman, I want to assure you that I am committed to following the church. But I look above the church and I see what God requires of me. And my first and primary allegiance is always to God. Always. And so I need to check my conscience with God before I do what men ask me to do. And I was offended as I thought more and more about it. And I know that I have a propensity to use strong words, and I'm not going to do that today. But I hope that a message can be communicated to our other brethren that the process of bringing a document back should give us opportunity to review it, pray over it, and think clearly about it before we are asked to discuss it and vote on it in public purview. Thank you, sir.
I want to assure you, Elder Graham, that we will convey these thoughts. And we do have some folks from the General Conference. And by the way, this is awkward for all of us because these are our brothers and sisters. And they are as welcome here as any other individual. And please, my brethren, don't think we hate you, because we don't. You are our brothers and sisters, and we love you, and you're a part of the North American Division, and we want to keep you happy because you pay tithe here. Yes.
Alex Bryan, Upper Columbia Conference. That's Bryan.
No T.
And by the way, may I remind the group I received many interesting text messages and emails throughout the year that are very, very interesting.
You missed that. You missed that.
What did he say?
He said he received very many interesting text messages throughout the year that are very interesting.
And so have I. So have I.
That's why I wanted him to hear the comment. Go ahead.
Brother Chair, I know I don't need to remind you, and I know I don't need to remind this distinguished body, but perhaps I rise because I need to remind myself that this is not about policy. It's about people. People. A couple of weeks ago, some of you will be familiar with the hashtag #MeToo campaign, where women spoke openly and passionately about the ways that they have been abused, sidelined, raped. And I was moved deeply. But I was even moved more deeply by colleagues of mine in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, women, who wrote about ways that they had been treated inside this church by brothers. And I was even moved more deeply to the point of tears, as some of those testimonies were by students of mine, young women, who are now ministering in this church. And as I was reading those Me Too confessions, testimonies, I flipped over and I saw what's going on in Hollywood, where the most despicable abuse has been going on for decades and everyone remains silent. And now we're in an era where more and more stories are coming forth from Washington, D.C. to journalists across the country, and on it went. And it struck me. This is just for me. It struck me. Where we allow the degradation of women anywhere, we are complicit, in a way, everywhere. And where we contribute to a culture that allows women to be treated as second-class citizens, we are culpable. Where women are allowed to be subhuman anywhere. I affirm the courage of the Pacific Union and the Columbia Union, and neither of which I am a part. But I just want to rise today to say that for the rest of us, how long can we wait? How dangerous can we allow our society to be for women? I pray that we would find a way Yes, unity is important. Yes, moving forward as a body together is important. But every day that goes by, we've got to find a way to make it happen, and not 5, 10, 15, 25 years down the road, for the sake not just of women, but of all of us. It's not about policy. It's about people. Thank you, Brother Chair.
Thank you.
My name is William Cox. I'm president of Allegheny West Conference and a proud member of the Columbia Union. I was asked, where were you when the meeting started, by a colleague, and I shared with him I have a granddaughter, Sydney, who's 7 years old. And she came to me and she said, "Poppy, you're going to be at my sleepover Saturday night." And it was a no-brainer. The church will forgive you. My granddaughter would not. And so I made the appropriate decision. Sydney is the product of a marriage between my daughter, Letitia, and I don't call him a son-in-law, my son, Shadid. When Letitia and Shadid started dating, he was not a Seventh-day Adventist. And he came to me and wanted to ask for Letitia's hand in marriage, and I said to him, I said, "Well, Shadid, we're Christians, and we believe that you need to walk the same path." So we went through a very protracted process of studying the Word, going through the fundamental doctrines and beliefs of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I think the 14th fundamental policy says that this church will not discriminate between male and female. And he came to me and he said, "What's this deal on women's ordination?" So I go through the process of saying, well, the church has a process of identifying whether or not a person is qualified to serve as an ordained minister in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And when they meet that criteria, because it's written out, then they can serve in that capacity. Now, be clear, the church does not do the calling. The church simply recognizes the gift that is being manifested in the life of the individual who is under question. And if a female meets those criteria, then it is nothing less than discrimination to go contrary to the rules that we've already set as a church. Now, we spent a lot of money bringing theologians in from different views and backgrounds in terms of whether or not this was a biblical issue. And the report said that there really wasn't a biblical issue involved, but 2/3 of that group said that women should be allowed to be ordained. So if it's not a biblical issue, then it becomes an issue of conscience from my perspective. And so how do I tell my son or my daughter or my 7-year-old granddaughter who may at some point in time feel the calling of God on her life, that you can preach. You can go to Oakwood, my alma mater, because that's where my money's going. You can go to Oakwood, get a degree in theology, go to Andrews University, our seminary, and get all of the biblical teachings and training. And then you can work for the church. Nobody's going to stop you from preaching. But the church has decided that they will not recognize your calling by ordaining you. Now, I don't know how long that's going to take for my conscience to change on that subject. And I appreciate the time and the effort. But at some point in time, if there is an unjust law, then it's no law at all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David Dennis from the Southern New England Conference. I want to go back to a comment that Elder Bryant made in regards to the fact that we're not breaking any policy, or the unions are not breaking policy. Which, to me, then the use of the word non-compliance is a strange phrase to me. Because if no policy has been broken, then there is no non-compliance. So to use that phrase, or to continue to use that phrase, I think is putting on the table or giving a fact over that really isn't in play at this point in time. And I would suggest that we as a body not refer to ourselves as being, or any part of us not being in compliance, because it's not true at this point in time. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, if I could respond. What I said is not in policy, but it is a voted action of the church, of the General Conference in session. And so if you look at the document covers policies and voted actions of the church. And so you can be in non-compliance of a voted action of the church, even though that voted action has not been placed in policy explicitly.
Thank you for the clarification.
There is a sense, and I'm not going to put this forward as an argument that I'm making, but there is a sense in which a policy was broken. The General Conference, in its policy book, talks about non-discrimination. And then it says the General Conference will not discriminate. Male, female, race, etc., etc. And then there's a bracket in the policy that says, with the exception of positions that require ordination. That's a policy. So, you know, to look fairly at what happened, Columbia and Pacific Union failed to comply to the policy that says you must discriminate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly a rendering of the policy. I'm not going to interpret, I'm not going to even comment on it. I'm just saying there is a sense in which a policy was broken. Not everybody agrees with me on that. Not everybody has to agree with me on that. But there's a sense, okay? I'm not saying a policy was broken. I'm saying there's a sense in which it may have been broken. Anyway, I'll stop.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over here.
My name is Kwesi Ansa Adu, Quebec Conference, SDACC. Mr. President, Elder Dan, I'm so happy today I want to applaud the administration, the president, secretary especially, who are in charge of policy, coming out clearly today that the two unions are out of compliance with the GC vote, which of course is policy because the Constitution and bylaws do include. And I want to thank you so much for this clarification. I think it is going to help a lot in the resolution process of what is happening. And I want to applaud you on that. I want to clarify one point to this House, maybe bring a humble clarification. Women are in ministry. They are in ministry from the local church, the conferences, general conference. All our employees and people working as lay people, both male and female, have been in ministry since the biblical period till today. The conference treasurer, I'm the president, the treasurer of my field, Quebec Conference, is a female, and female are the majority. Before I became a Canadian citizen, I used to be a Ghanaian citizen. Women work hard. They are in ministry. The only difference which we are working towards, I am an advocate of women ordination. My problem is with how we are managing the conflict. When there is a conflict, Christ says, if you have something against somebody, leave your offering, go settle. So solving conflict is part of mission. When you are doing mission and you are fighting with your brother, settle it first before you go forward. And if it is not settled, keep on praying about it. So women are in ministry. I will be very happy to see in my lifetime women pastors ordained, because I have a woman pastor and I'm trying to bring a second pastor in my conference as I speak today. And I tell them, I do sympathize with your problem, but changing something that has existed for over 150 years needs careful prayer and management of the issue. We have to manage a change. Just to end, so I don't go beyond the time, what I want to ask, excuse me, what I want to ask this House humbly is that Seventh-day Adventist Church has been the most patient church for still waiting for Jesus Christ coming. Very patient. 1844, we thought Christ was coming. He has not come, and we are patiently working towards that. My conclusion is this. Let us be patient. Let us pray humbly. The Lord is in charge of this church. I'm not too old, but I've seen women deaconesses being ordained. It didn't exist before. Women elders have been ordained by placing of hands on them. It didn't exist before. Women are commissioned ministers, baptizing and doing everything in my conference. It didn't exist before. If it is the Lord's will, very soon, this will come to pass. The issue is, let us be patient and pray and be united and not to be separated as the Lord is about to do his work. Thank you. God bless you.
Okay, thank you. And we are going to start at 3 minutes because the timer's not working.
Sister White.
Sister White, it's good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Could you get?
Do you have any words of counsel for us?
Could you shed some light on the issue?
I just want to put a face to this. When I was 9 years old, my calling to ministry was confirmed by my Pathfinder leader. And I took a circuitous route, but always God has had his passion on me. And I've been one of those people who have received very derogatory comments from administration at times. I was told when I was in seminary with some of you that it must be clearly understood who wears the pants in the family. When I had children, my first daughter, I was pregnant with her, and my water broke while I was giving a Bible study. I mean, my passion has been for Jesus. And later on, I was told, that because I had young children, I couldn't be a Bible worker. And I was giving Bible studies and leading out in a Bible study group at the same time. But I always had this conviction that God in his timing would open the doors for me in full-time employment in pastoral ministry. And it happened. And God has enriched my life. And even after that, there have been bumps in the road. But God has led through all of those and has given me extra skills, extra strengths, even through the conflict. And regardless of what the church decides, I mean, I'm one of those from Southern California, one of those who've been ordained. I'm still going to share the gospel of Jesus Christ because that is the passion he's put in my heart. And nothing's going to stop me. And whether the church kicks me out or not, I am still going to proclaim Jesus. And I know that there are many women who feel that very same way.
Thank you for your comment. The church isn't going to kick you out. And the church isn't going to kick out any woman pastor. Period. Yes, sir.
Philip Warfield.
I think we're going to, I'm sorry. Please restore his time. We're going to cap it right where we are. In other words, those who are in line, we will ask to speak, and then we will end the discussion at that point. Please.
Philip Warfield, Southern Adventist University. I'm going to do my very best to articulate this well, as it is a sensitive topic. I want to repeat some sentiments that were said earlier, that unity is not uniformity. Just as there is diversity of thought, diversity of culture, and we as the most racially diverse church, we have a mission. I speak on behalf of many of my fellow students at Southern who are looking for where they fit in our church. I speak of a woman like my girlfriend who always asks me, Phil, what am I supposed to do if I have a passion for this church? Where am I supposed to fit in? For the situation for when I was running for SA president and a theology major came up to me and said, I noticed that your girlfriend always walks in front of you. Do you realize your position in your own relationship and what you're supposed to be all the time and that you have to wear the pants in the relationship? I can't vote for you if you think that way. I speak for the women who are afraid to get up here, and even for the women at Southern who want to be SA president, but there hasn't been a female SA president at Southern for 30 years. I want to echo statements that women do belong in the church. Not just in the church, but leading the church. We haven't talked about Deborah today, the judge, Deborah. We haven't talked about Paul's friends in the New Testament, those who were working with him, who were very instrumental in bringing those individuals in. And because I seek that this is an Adventist church that we can all be a part of, I want to remind us all that the future of our church depends on the few of us who are here, the young of us who are here, representing our respective universities. And there's something that I've always been told, that God qualifies the called, and that the church doesn't necessarily call us themselves, but it is our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who says, hey, come, follow me. He didn't say, only Europeans follow me. He talked about everybody. Everybody. And I hope that we learn and we grow from this controversy, and that we grow together, and in the same way realize that everybody's a part, whether you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, or female. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Elena Knapp, Lake Union. I have a comment and then a question of clarification. I hesitate to even say this because it's going to give away my age, but I am a full-time public university student, and I did my full-time undergrad in public university. But I have been very grateful to be affirmed in ministry. I've been involved in ministry for the last 15 years, giving Bible studies, and I love this church. And I love what I do. I thankfully have not had to experience some of the challenges that some of my peers have in ministry. And the question that I have, though, with the young people that I work with, and I may hesitate a little bit because I'm not sure the best way to phrase it. Now, my question of clarification is a genuine one, in that I really want to understand, what does it mean for us as a church when we disagree, and when there is a policy and some churches aren't in that policy? And I'm thinking of it more from a perspective of I'm trying to understand how do we work together within that, because policy is there to help us to work together, from what I understood, correct? That's what that's the purpose of policy. Policy is there to
It helps us to facilitate mutual agreements that
Yes.
enable us to facilitate the work.
But policy isn't necessarily salvation, correct?
No.
Correct. So I just wanted to make that clarification. So, but with that, but how we treat that policy, it can become salvific because of how we treat one another as a result of that, correct?
That's true.
So the question I have is, what does this mean for us as a division and how we relate to the General Conference? I'll be honest, I don't fully understand the full gravity of this, and I'll be honest, I'm not on either side. And the reason being is that I see a need for women to be able to have someone to go to when things are tough. They can't go to a male pastor. That's just the reality of it. But at the same time, I see that there's a very important role and process that we've had in history that I think is important. When you look at the sanctuary, when you look at even the role of the father and the mother in the home, there's a beautiful unity that works together there that I believe that God also wants us to be able to learn to work together as a church. So regardless of that, what I'm trying to understand is, how do we function as a church in policy?
Okay. Well, you stopped right on the dot. That was pretty good. Let me tell you about, I'll try to answer in two different ways. Number one, at the time when the two unions were making their choices, the union presidents met, all 9 of them. And the congenial atmosphere that was there expressed itself this way. We love you guys. We are in harmony with you missionally, doctrinally, and every other way. We are not going to entertain ordination in our unions. And if the women in your unions accept a call to our union, we will not accept the ordination. But we love you. We're going to work with you. We're not going to get no rancor, no animosity. And I think the collegiality of the group continued in a very positive way. The North American Division, this is the second part of the answer, the North American Division, in making a recommendation to the General Conference, did make a statement that said, we are recommending to the world body that they move ahead on the basis of, of godly forbearance. Recognizing that if this is of God, it will prosper. If it is not, it won't. And that really would be my solution. If it was good enough for the New Testament Christians and Gamaliel, why wouldn't it be good enough for us? So that's my response. That's not a complete, but that was the voted response to the General Conference of the North American Division. We are asking the world church to exercise godly forbearance. And again, that is a New Testament principle, and if you read Ellen White, she has a whole lot to say about that. Over here.
Larry Schalk, Vice President at Andrews University. I want to address my comments to the group. I sit on the General Conference Executive Committee as well as the North American Division Executive Committee. The majority of the comments that have been made this afternoon, I don't think address the topic of which the meeting was called for. I understand the issue of women's ordination and those that have strongly support it and those that are opposed against it. And sitting on the General Conference Executive Committee, I would have hoped to have received some feedback on the document that was presented and deferred for a year, because I'm going to have to address that a year from now, as well as you, as well as many others in this group. So what I would look for is recommendations on the document and how it can be improved, either throw it out and not do anything at all, or how the document could be enhanced and improved to meet what we think is appropriate for the North American Division as well as for the World Church. So I chair many committees, and it's easy to get sidetracked a little bit with important issues and important discussions. I'm disappointed a little bit that we haven't addressed the issue for which I think the meeting was called for that could have helped me when I have to do my work a year from now. So if there's other comments that people would make with the limited number of people that are left, I would find it useful. How do we improve the document, or just discard it?
Thank you, Larry. Yes, sir.
Ricardo Graham, Pacific Union. Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that existing World Church policy states that in relative to ordination, that final authority rests with the union. Am I remembering that correctly? Has that policy been changed?
I think that is correct.
The second part, has it been changed?
No, I don't think it's been changed.
So the present world policy says that final authority for ordination rests with the union. If that is the case, how did that authority get usurped and placed somewhere else? The second question I have, Elder, is that I believe that you were present in 2012 in the Pacific Union at our constituency session, and you observed that the delegates, after discussion by General Conference individuals and by others, people speaking pro and con, that our about 500 delegates voted 79% to 21% to authorize the Pacific Union to give authority to local conferences to perform ordinations to the gospel ministry for men and women. Am I correct?
I'm feeling like I'm on trial here, but yeah, you're correct.
My final observation is that just last year in 2016, an individual wanted to place on the agenda a discussion.
And I was there too.
And the body voted 20 to 80% not to allow him to add that agenda for discussion of women's ordination onto the agenda. The officers of the Pacific Union follow the direction of the people who have placed us in position. That's our executive committee between sessions. It's the session congregation delegation during the session. I, as a president, my other officers with me, we have no authority to change anything the constituency has voted. Current policy allows for the General Conference to request a special committee session. They have never done that. It currently exists. If they were to ask us, officers in the Pacific Union, to have a special constituency session called, we would oblige. We have never been requested to do so. They have never had a direct conversation with us, but they have talked to the division, and that's probably the correct chain of command. But my people in the Pacific Union, we believe that it's important to recognize total member involvement. Total member involvement means everybody. We recognize God's gifts on everybody.
Okay, thank you. I think I would, pardon me? No, I think I would be remiss if I did not say that I was there in 2012 and I was there in 2016. I did not sense mass rebellion. I will not call those who voted the way they did rebels. I will, however, say that I do believe the administration of ordination is the responsibility of the unions, unfettered by any other organization, including the General Conference. However, is the right to make policy on ordination, does that devolve to the unions? That's the question. And I think that's what has many people dialoguing back and forth. So I'm not going to ask you to come to the mic and see if you agree with me, because I don't want to put you on the stand. But I think that is the core of the debate. It is not who has the right to administer. The General Conference does not have the right to say to a local conference, you can't ordain Bill. But who holds the right to create the policy that directs who does what? See, I think that's where the argument is. And I'm going to come to this mic.
Samson Simbeba from Southwestern Adventist University. Hopefully I won't mess up with job opportunities in the future by saying this.
Well, I don't know. I'll get my pad out so we can jot down the words.
Personally, for myself, I don't really have a view on this topic. I'm sorry. I don't want to say I represent Southwestern, because I'm pretty sure you go to that campus, a lot of people have their views. As for myself, I don't even know what my dad thinks about this. I'm over here like, what would my dad say? I don't even know. I'm sorry, but you know, it's an interesting topic, and I don't know a lot about it. So I guess I want to ask. So what's the difference? Is there a difference between being a pastor and being ordained?
An ordained minister can do 4 things that an unordained minister can't.
Hit me with it.
Okay, here they are. Have you got your seatbelt on?
Yeah.
Number 1, an ordained minister can organize churches. Secondly, an ordained minister can disband churches, that is, with the vote of the congregation. Thirdly, an ordained minister can lay hands on other individuals being ordained. Number 4, an ordained minister can be a conference president. Those are 4 things that an unordained pastor cannot do. Now, let me refer to something else, and that is the way they are remunerated. They are to be remunerated.
What does that word mean?
I mean paid. Pardon me. They are to be paid the same as they move up the gradations. I think there are some places where they are held back because they are not ordained. In my opinion, that's discriminatory. So that's the difference. That's what the argument is about.
Okay.
I was a pastor before I apostatized and went into administration for 25 years, or almost, somewhere in there. I can't remember, but pretty much 25 years. I did organize one church. I never disbanded any church.
Does organized mean like a church?
That means a group of people have come together, they worked as a company, and then they come to the place where they can support themselves, and they become a church. So isn't that, I mean, that's a good thing because, inside the House we think organizing, but you would think, well, I went in there and I organized them. I had 5 committees and all. That's what it sounds like, right?
That's what it sounds like.
And that's why I see what you're saying.
All right.
But I never disbanded a church. Always loved going and participating in ordinations. And I did get to become a conference president.
Amen.
But that's what an unordained person cannot do.
All right, thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify that. I see my time is up, so I'm...
Yeah, it is. Thank you very much.
This guy came up after me. And Donna did too, so you just need to know.
If you think I'm getting in trouble with my wife, you're just dead wrong. Oh. You know what he's doing to me up here? I mean, he's just a bad man. He says, don't you know that a couple of folks have come up after you said they couldn't come up? And one of them was your wife. And I said, if you think I'm going to get into my trouble with my wife over this, buddy, you are just dead wrong.
Kyle just gave me his place.
No, you stay right there, sweetheart. I don't care if all of them are angry with me. I'm going to listen to you. I want to go home tonight. Somebody find Desiree Bryant and bring her down here. Okay, Kyle, you're next.
Okay. Kyle Allen, NAD ASI. I've been struggling to know what to say because, there's so much about this issue that is so hard to put into words sometimes. And honestly, there's a lot that I don't know. There's a lot that I don't know. And, but I do know a few things. And I'll just share those out of conviction of my heart. Number one, I do know that God does call women into ministry. I was called to ministry by a woman sitting right over there, hired me into Southeastern California Conference. And I do believe that with all my heart. I've struggled over this whole ordination question and all the things that people have talked about, the role of ordination, and whether it's biblical or not.
And I'm going to let him make the decision. And Shirley's coming right on. Go ahead, keep going, Kyle.
I feel a lot of pressure behind me. Oh, boy. I don't have a wife yet, so anyway, I don't know how it is. Okay.
We can help you. I did today, and they weren't even, they were both married. I could do it for you.
I always walk right into it. Anyway, okay. 1 minute left. But I do want to say, and I also am convicted of this, I do believe it is so important that we stay unified with our world church. And I don't know how to accomplish that in the light of this whole document and the discussion about the document. I don't have the wisdom for that. But I do make an appeal that we stay unified with our world church. And I know, Elder Jackson, that you have said that many times, and I really appreciate your words to that end because it's so important. I think a lot of people in our division think that the NAD is trying to go against the world church, and I don't think that's true. I think the world needs to see that we are part of a family. And so I really believe that it's important that we do that. But what's really on my heart, and I hope we'll get a few more seconds because, sometimes the way we speak about things, regardless of what side of an issue we're on, is almost as important as what we believe. And it pains me when I see the way that people have spoken about our church leaders on this issue. Whether you're on Facebook or you're in the back halls of wherever you may be, to hear the things that are said about Elder Wilson, to hear the things that are said about Elder Jackson, sometimes are frankly very shameful. We should not be saying these things of God's anointed leaders, no matter what side you are on. And I think that we really need to ask ourselves the question, when we get to heaven, is Jesus going to ask us, what was your position on the document? Or is he going to ask us, how did you treat or speak about your brother or your sister? What did you say about each other? Do you know each other? Does the world know us by our love for one another? And I have to share this one statement from Councils on Writers and Editors, because I think we forget that when we post things, when we say things on Facebook or wherever we are, that they are really representing our church to those on the outside. Just listen to this quickly. She says, "He who is careless and heedless in uttering words or in writing words for publication to be sent to broadcast into the world, sending forth expressions that can never be taken back, is disqualifying himself to be entrusted with the sacred work that devolves upon Christ's followers at this time. Those who practice giving harsh thrusts are forming habits that will strengthen by repetition and will have to be repented of. We should carefully examine our ways and our spirit and see in what manner we are doing the work given us of God, which involves the destiny of souls." Now, I'll skip down. She says,
Don't skip too far, Kyle.
Okay. "Every unwise word that is uttered through our brethren will be treasured up by the prince of darkness." And then she says, "A train of senseless quibbles of Satan's own invention are brought before minds while the people are crying for food and for meat in due season." And how much have we been distracted from the mission that God wants us to focus on when we've been backbiting and arguing against each other and talking bad about our leaders and the people who are on the other side? Our words mean something, friends. Our witness has been compromised. We've got to focus back on where Jesus has called us to focus. It is time to raise our eyes to the souls that are dying around us in this division, who are hungry and thirsty for light and truth. We need to get out of the gutters of our disagreements and our backbiting. The world needs this church. They need to see our love. When they see that in us, our churches will be so full, they won't know what to do.
Thank you. He did get more than 3 minutes, didn't he? Well, he did, but we were laughing, and that took some time. Go ahead.
Calvin Watkins, President of Southwest Region. I yield to the lady to my right.
Well,
Your
as much as I love her, it's your turn.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I've sat since this morning listening to everything. I'm a little bit disappointed because I see Protestants and Catholics coming together. I see our world on the brink of chaos. And we can spend 3 hours talking about women's ordination and other things. I'm in support of women's ordination. I'm a little over 40.
That's going against the doctrine and the 10 Commandments and all the policies of the Seventh Adventist Church.
Thank you, Alan.
Calvin, I am too.
But I missed most of the civil rights movement. I didn't get to march across the Pettus Bridge. I didn't get to march down Auburn Avenue in Atlanta, Georgia. Didn't get to go to Birmingham for the sit-in. Didn't get a chance to go to jail. So I miss being able to demonstrate and be on the right side of a struggle. I will not miss this one.
Yes, sir.
I know it's right. And I believe it's biblical. And I believe in the priesthood of all believers. But not only that, I believe in the equality of all believers. So we cannot afford not to bring as many workers as we possibly can to this battle. To this battle. This is a warfare. If every Adventist minister we had was actively engaged in evangelism, we would still fall short. I served many years as a ministerial director, interviewing young preachers. It's hard to find preachers now or pastors who will do this. When I go to Oakwood, Southwest Region, Andrews, I see all of these willing female workers. We need them. Policies. Good friend of mine, Dr. Pollard, made a statement about 7 or 8 years ago. He said, any policy that does not serve people is a policy that needs to be replaced. I know we have voted certain issues, but it's time for us not to be neutral. We have to take a stand one way or the other. This is not a battle between them and us. This is a battle for the heart of this church. And we have to come together or the enemy will win. And could I have one more second?
Okay, one.
God bless you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Megan Weems with Pacific Union College. So I spent a year as a student missionary, and I've been on various mission trips, and I've never felt the handicap of my gender until I went somewhere else, somewhere out of the NAD. So I didn't really know what I had here and how blessed I was to be a woman here in the westernized world. So as I come back, I've never had the call to be ordained or I'm going to be a teacher, and that's okay. But I know that from the stats this morning, we need pastors. And women make 52% of the Adventist church. And I believe in my heart that the God that I serve does not say who can and cannot give his word. So I can't understand and I can't wrap my mind around the fact that if I wanted to be ordained, I couldn't. That doesn't make sense. Because I know in my heart that there's so much that I can give, and so I'm not the only one with talents that would be underutilized if I wanted to be ordained. And exactly like this gentleman was saying, that's exactly my point, is how do we further the discussion? How do we further this document? Is to be the change. If you want to make a change, you have to be the change. And so I think that we need to set the example for the rest of the world. Have the NAD come to a united front in which we say something different than everybody else is saying, if that's the right thing. And in my heart, I believe that that's the right thing. Because I don't think that my sisters around this world should be handicapped. Because if we're going to spread the word, if every single person is going to hear about the word of Jesus Christ, then we need everybody's voices. Every single woman and man. And I don't know about everybody else, but I'm ready to go home. And I'm only 23. So I've only seen a little bit of the bad of this world. But I'm ready to go home, and I know that everyone needs to hear the word of Christ before that happens.
Thank you. Well, Sister Jackson.
I hope this won't affect our marriage.
Well, I'm waiting to hear.
Because the document is so severely flawed, in my opinion, I move that this body, the North America Executive Committee, express their strong disagreement with it. Period.
Okay? Is there a second to the motion? Well, you may debate the motion. By the way, I did not put her up to this. And she is a sincere Christian woman. I know that. She says she just came down here long enough to cause trouble. Okay. Is there someone who wants to speak to the motion?
It's just a point of order. I was told she did not have voice or vote. I don't know whether that's an accurate statement or not.
I don't think that's an accurate statement. She has
Okay?
voice
I
and
just
vote.
wanted to make sure. We get,
Yeah, she has voice and vote. She's an associate director. You know, because, by the way, I mean, it's a little humorous, but you may choose to agree or disagree with my wife, and I am not going to be upset one way or the other. So don't feel awkward about getting up and saying that was great or that was horrible. And I will accept both. Yes?
I'm waiting for another thing, but I would give my impression regarding this motion. I respect highly what is behind, and I respect the spirit. However, I'm a little bit reluctant how we can vote our disagreement to a document that was not adopted. The document was sent back to be improved. So probably this is my opinion. I don't want to.
No, that's fair. That's a fair comment.
I would prefer that somehow we send some elements to oversight committee. It is very difficult for me to accept this concept of oversight committee, but to those who will work in order to make the document relevant.
Okay, thank you.
Waiting in line for the next.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Damson Opong, SDA Church in Canada. On the issue of the document, I am a little queasy when it comes to the disciplinary part. But on the general spirit of it, I'm just thinking, is it now that we have an issue with the overarching issue or the underlying issue or the elephant in the room, whatever you want to do, is the women's ordination. So that is that for now. But what I'm thinking down the road, what will be the issues? Will there be theological issues that a renegade conference, renegade union can depend? No, I'm not using the word as I should. No, renegade conference, for instance, can decide to do whatever I want with the tithing, with theology, and still. So I'm looking at a way where the last two speakers before was saying, I'm looking for ways in which we can bring a certain bridge bring things together, whilst working with the World Church. That is who we are. We are part of the General Conference. Whilst working with the World Church at the same time understanding the fact that there are special needs in that, yes, we have ministers who are female, who happen to be female, who are excellent ministers and who are excellent at what they do. We have some men, I said it, who may not have any business in the ministry. But you see, at the same time, there has to be that fine balance, Mr. Chair, where we are also part of the world body. Some parts of the world may see things different as we do. That's okay. But I believe that if we are really true in the spirit of forbearance, as we say, eventually we will get to where we need to get to. Do we need to make certain changes? Yes, we do. By setting an example that, yes, North America has charted a course in mission where there is real work being done here by female ministers. And that will be the showcase to the world that this is what is being done here. Try it, and it may make a difference in your territory. So I believe that we have to be, the fine balance has to be how this document is processed properly. My queasiness is on the disciplinary part. How do we forge ahead with forbearance, not charging ahead with our own ideology and our own sensitivity? That is where my worry is. I don't know what the next issue will be and how that may affect the world body.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize to you because you really weren't talking to the motion. We have to come talk directly to the motion that is on the floor, which is to register our concern or disagreement, rather, with the General Conference. That is the motion on the floor, and you must address that motion. If you're here to talk about make a comment on the broader discussion, I'm not going to accept those discussions unless you are talking to the motion. So the next person in line is Elder Kibble.
Alvin Kibble, North American Division.
Are you speaking to the motion?
I am speaking to the motion, sir.
Okay.
With all due respect to the fine lady from Maryland and the First Lady of the North American Division, the First Lady of the North American Division, I would like to ask if we might consider amending the motion. And because of the previous speaker's instruction to us that we really don't have a document because it has not been properly voted to address formally, but that we would register concerns by way of representatives from this body who would speak to the committee who will be reviewing the document. I think something like that might better serve us, because we're not speaking to something that has not been voted, but we are addressing concerns to the body that has been asked to review this document. I think that keeps us in line with where our chairman framed this discussion when we began this morning. And so I would move an amendment. The language of that can be edited as it needs to be, but in the spirit of the fine lady from Maryland.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask legal counsel, is the amendment hostile to the motion? The motion, Karnick, was that we register our disagreement with the document. It was seconded. Then we have a motion that says that we have an amendment to the motion that would have representatives from this group go and express concerns to the body responsible for modifying the document. Is that amendment hostile to the motion? Your boss? Whoa, things have changed. Sure, you can do it right now.
I think, Mr. Chairman, I think this is an area where the chair has a lot of discretion.
Sit down. No, come.
There's a lot of different ways to think of hostile motions and amendments. And in some sense, all motions are hostile because they try to change it. That's the whole point. One way, and by the way, hostile motions are part of our common law, so to speak. They're not in the rules of order, our rules of order. But one way to understand them is, if it passed, would it be the same as voting it no? So in other words, and you get all these convoluted scenarios where if you make an amendment that if it passed would be the same as voting no on the document. And I don't think that's what it does here. I think what it does here is it takes it and it dials it back a couple of notches. Okay. And that's the kind of thing that a body can decide to do and is not necessarily hostile.
Okay, I'm going to accept the amendment. And the amendment will read that we request our representatives to express the concerns that have been expressed to the committee responsible for modifying the document, the concerns expressed by the body. Okay, is that fair? Is that a fair reflection, Elder Kibble?
I think it is, and I'm gratified that my nemesis has agreed with me in the person of Todd McFarlane. I'm amazed at how well he got that. I reached into my wallet, but I discovered that I'd given all my money in the offering yesterday.
Yeah, I did the same thing, Alvin, and they've got no money left. And Tom has an effective way of ripping you. No, that's not true. I was pleased to be able. Now, we're talking to the amendment now, not to the motion. The amendment is that we have representatives of this group take to those responsible for modifying the document the concerns expressed by the group. No, wait a minute. Who is, Alvin made the motion. You're next.
Oh, I think she was in.
Are you next? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Celeste Ryan Blyden from the Columbia Union, and I appreciate the motion and the amendment. I was very concerned about the process that appeared to be taken with this whole situation, this whole document. And since then, you recall that we weren't allowed to see the document until it was presented on the floor, and then there was concern, about it being leaked and all of that. But it has also been reported, and it needs to be confirmed, the names of those who are on the Unity Committee. The chair who presented this at the annual council made it clear, he quite distanced himself from it, saying he had been given a document on September 14th, about a month before annual council. And he has since been, he stepped down from the chairmanship of the Unity Oversight Committee. And then it has been reported the names of those who are apparently the committee. And as I read the names, they all appear to be male. There was only one name that had a first initial, and I couldn't tell whether that was male or female. But if we're going to be considering a document and that is punitive and that has implications that are far-reaching and far beyond what we've even considered, and we're talking about, and they made it very clear at the annual council that really this is about women's ordination. So they made it clear. They said it is really about women's ordination. We understand there's non-compliance in 81% of church areas, but this is really what we're focused on. And yet there are no women represented. So I speak to support the amendment because I think that not only is it important just to have women, but that North America get to choose some representatives from this committee and ask that those representatives be a part of this discussion. And if we're going to look at this, let's look at it fairly. Let's make sure that we're rightly represented in the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Daniel Honoré. Initially, I stood to perhaps make a motion to table this motion. However, and my concern was the same concern that I had with the initial document. 14 pages, you didn't have time to decide. I think in the way that the initial motion was made, it has a lot of ramifications, and it's not something that we should just vote on quickly and send it up. However, I support the amendment in that it allows this body to send representation which can articulate some of the thoughts that have been expressed around this room today and serves our purpose without rushing into anything that we haven't thoroughly analyzed. As Elder Stanojevic mentioned, it is a moot point because the document was pulled back and is still being studied. It doesn't preclude us, however, from sending representatives from this body who can express our thoughts. So I support the amendment.
Okay, now, about a half an hour ago, I said there weren't going to be any more speakers. Then Sister Jackson appeared on the scene, and we had a moment of relief, of merriment and relief. But I will not allow anyone after the one standing currently.
I want to get in that line if I could.
Okay, and Elder Bryant wants to get in the line. And I do want to read you one text message that I have received while sitting here, and it reads like this. you better go and stay with Alex tonight.
We do have a free bedroom, actually.
Okay, who is next? Okay, please.
Justin Lyons from the Minnesota Conference. I stand in support of the amendment. I was originally standing opposed to the original motion. I don't think that most of us disagree with the entire document. My sense is many of us would support the upholding of policy in general, but that there are many aspects about this document we have serious issue with. The signing of loyalty agreements and constitutionality issues and constituency issues. But with this amendment, I would speak in favor of the amendment.
Okay, I am going to run back over here because we kind of got out of line. So, Sister Lisa, go ahead. To the amendment.
Speaking to the amendment, this document was not supported by the majority of members of Executive Committee, was sent back for that reason with substantive discussion. And I've not heard anything here today that expanded on that. I wish we had spent more time on the issues. Therefore, I speak against the amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Spencer Page, Burman University, Canada. I would like to speak in support of the amendment that was made. However, the comments that were shared over here by the woman who spoke, I don't know where she went, Celeste. Those were actually my thoughts as well. And I was concerned that the body that, as she said, developed the GC unity document did not include any women. And so if the rest of the body would approve, I think I may like to offer another amendment to the amendment. And that amendment that I would propose would be to not only, as Mrs. Jackson said, send the document back as is, and make the recommendation that we send a representative from the NAD, but also that we request that in the drafting or writing of a new document, we request that at least one female minister or person serving in leadership assist in the drafting or writing of a new document.
You certainly are entitled to move that. It has been seconded. However, I think should the body vote it, it is only a request.
Yes.
We have no authority to add or take away from the committee that has been struck, whoever that is, by the General Conference. So as long as we understand it as a recommendation or a request, that's okay. So we have an amendment to the amendment, and it has been seconded. If you are going to talk to the amendment, if you just showed up there, Mr. President, I'm not recognizing you, and there's two people at the mic, would you like to talk to the...
My comment can address that and the other, everything.
Oh, yeah, okay. This is a catch-all. Go for it.
Is yellow square or round?
Pardon me?
That is yellow square or round? That's a wrong question because yellow is a color, not a space. The whole document is asking the wrong question, and our amendments here are asking the wrong question, because women's issue and ordinations all addressed at the union. The first motion we made really states to the General Conference, we don't want anything more than what we already have. We don't need to have more policies and laws to govern the actions on ordination. We already have that in place. So the amendment to have a woman go there, like you said, just a request. We can't really make that. If we're going to make an amendment to send people to go to the General Conference, what are they going to say? Because we have not had time to discuss what to say. We have not given Larry any direction as to what to give to the General Conference. We've only discussed here. So the first motion that was made here, without the amendments, and I'm against both amendments, is to say basically, we don't want the governance document. We have policies in place. So I'm against both amendments and like us to address the first motion.
Okay, now, did you have a point of order? Oh, okay. If it's a point of clarification, please. You can do that.
Yeah, so I am sitting here, I'm a scientist, and I'm just confused on a little bit of levels because
you better be careful, because if this is not a point of clarification, I'm going to ask you to sit down. Okay?
Because I want to understand that this document wasn't passed, and didn't we already, by not passing the document, voice our concern in opposition to that document?
Yes.
And also, don't we have members in this committee that are members of that committee? So,
Yes.
So why then are we having to have a representation again to go to that committee when we already have people here that on that committee?
That's a fair question. We have people who, you're speaking against the amendment, is what you were doing in your clarification. All right, I am going to ask, unless it's a point of order or a point of clarification.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chairman. I was standing in line. Are we discussing now the amendment of the amendment?
No, we're discussing the amendment to the amendment.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
Okay.
right.
I would like to say about the First Amendment, but there's not
It's too late.
time now.
Too late. Thank you. Thank you for standing. Okay, we're going to vote on the amendment to the amendment, which means that we will do what? Ask somebody to go, we'll ask make a request to include women pastors from the NAD to have representation on the committee. Okay, so I'm going to, do we have the clickers working?
Yeah, they're ready. You have that action on there.
Okay, you understand, if it's not clear, let me make it clear. The amendment to the amendment is that we request the presence of a female pastor on the committee that does the finalizing work on the document, or the revised work. Okay?
Mr. Chairman, maybe we can put the amendment, the last amendment, on the screen for a minute. I think it's very succinct, the last one.
Okay, read it for us, please.
Request at least one female in leadership to be included in the committee. And this is the oversight committee that I think that we're referencing.
Okay.
The General Conference Oversight Committee.
All right. All of those please vote. Okay.
It's 130, 38 to 49.
Okay.
To 4.
Now we will vote on the amendment, which says, let's put it up on the screen, and we'll be voting on the amendment as amended. Okay, please, what does it read? I can't read that part, I'm sorry.
That this NAD Executive Committee register concerns by way of representatives of this body who would speak to the committee reviewing the unity document as presented at the 2017 General Conference Annual Council.
So in other words, and that would be amended now to read including
one female.
A recommendation that one female actually be a part of the oversight committee.
To include a request that at least one female in leadership be included in the committee.
Right, okay, so that's what you're voting on now. Please take your clicker out and vote.
So that amendment becomes, that's it, right?
That becomes the motion.
But that's it, right? We've amended the motion to be that.
Right, but then we have to, that's it.
That's it.
Okay, Elder Bryant, read the figures for us, please.
158 yes, 41 no, and 5 abstain.
Okay, so having voted the amendment and then the amendment to the amendment, you just voted the motion, which is that, tell them, Elder Bryant.
That this NAD Executive Committee register concerns by way of representatives of this body who would speak to the committee reviewing the unity document as presented at the 2017 General Conference Annual Council and request at least one female in leadership be included on the Oversight Committee.
Okay, that has been voted, and that is finished. Now, Elder Stoyanovich?
Move that line up to be
Okay, no comment? All right. Now, it is 22 minutes to 5. And we have spent since 1:30. It's still 3.5 hours. We said we would give 4.
It's 3 hours.
Oh, it's 3 hours. Pardon me. My watch is wrong. Please take a 5-minute break. And after you do that, come right back because we're going to hear something from Oakwood University.
Oh, you want to send it to me?
Okay, good.
Where is it?
I don't want to.
434.
You do have to vote the main motion. You can't just put it just because the person would vote for the amendment, they voted against me, they don't vote the main motion.
I thought that once the...
Good sitting with you, Mark.